Hi Tribe. Today I want to talk a little bit about biotemperament and why biotemperament is such an important part of the focus on RO-DBT. So this is based on the theory that quite often someone's personality and predispositions are there long before their disorders develop, whether it be anorexia or a personality disorder. And even in the case, say, with eating disorders, the temperamental presentation is quite often still there afterwards. So RO-DBT takes a very different approach to treatment than a lot of other approaches, which are just focusing on, say, cognitions and behaviour. We're instead trying to focus on some of the underlying things that are going on for someone that lead them to developing their disorder or their problems in the first place. So that all comes with the idea of that maladaptive over-control, that there is some sort of underlying personality thing that is going to be leading to someone feeling so depressed or feeling like they want to starve themselves. In the case of autism spectrum, leading to a lot of those behaviours that are going to be causing problems. So the idea of the biotemperament comes from a lot of neurological research that's been developing over the last 10, 15, 20 years in regards to brain pathways, neural pathways. I won't necessarily go into the neural pathways, but they are very much based on our ventral vagal cortex, our dorsal vagal cortex, and those sort of areas of our limbic system. Brain bits have never been my strength, so I will leave it there. But there is a lot of neurological research coming out that really does suggest that people with maladaptive overcontrol have that underlying temperamental predisposition that is actually quite neurological and quite biological. So we can understand this is most likely to be from a genetic origin. There's nothing wrong with that. There are some really good things about these temperamental predispositions, but it is really important to keep in mind that us as therapists are working with people who may have a very different biological temperament to ourselves, and that's fine, but it is about understanding that. So from a theoretical perspective, some of the biotemperament traits, the very first one is a high negative affectivity. So that means threat sensitivity. So these clients are more likely to be able to see threats and risks in situations, and this is evident from young children all the way up through adulthood. I've worked with young children, and I do a lot of supervision of people who work with young children, and we do quite often see that some children are just more likely to see dangers and risks in everything than other children. So they're able to sort of say, oh God, this person's walking on something, they're going to fall, and feel really panicked by that, whereas other children might be more like, oh yeah, I want to do that as well. So there's a higher threat sensitivity. When we introduce this to clients, we sort of ask that they're more likely to see the roses or the thorns. People with high threat sensitivity are more likely to see those thorns, more likely to see the dangers in a situation, more likely to see, oh God, there's all these people there, there's probably some danger, as opposed to someone who doesn't have that high threat sensitivity, might get excited. Look at all these people, there must be something exciting going on. So the very first part is that high threat sensitivity, which does come along with maladaptive overcontrol. I will make the note that's also likely to be present in, say, borderline personality disorder, which is an under control disorder. So there is likely to be some of that in different ends of the spectrum, because it's not, these things don't just go together. These things are separate temperamental traits. But the very first one that is characteristic of a maladaptive overcontrol is a high threat sensitivity. But like I said, before I move on to the next one, this can also be a really good thing. For all of my clients who are presenting with maladaptive overcontrol, I really do try to emphasize that from an evolutionary perspective, this is great. How fantastic is it? You're going to be the first one running from any danger. I'm going to be looking and going, oh, what's going on here? But other people are going to be running and protecting themselves, which is great. And more able to see those risks means more able to problem solve in advance, troubleshoot in advance, but it is more likely to keep you stuck. It is more likely to keep you anxious, as opposed to having that attitude of, we'll just see how we go. It's constantly thinking of the risks and dangers of every situation, which is going to be a problem. The next biotemperamental trait is our low positive affectivity. So this is our reward sensitivity. People with overcontrol are less likely to experience rewards or rewarding experiences. Doesn't mean they don't have those positive emotions, but they're less likely to experience that sense of reward from everyday things. Whereas this is one of the reasons why I believe that I am very under control, is because I do have a very large amount of reward sensitivity. I like everything. I find everything enjoyable. Even the most mundane things, chuck me into it and I'm going to find a way of enjoying it. Whereas a lot of people with maladaptive overcontrol don't experience that. They experience it as unpleasant, or they don't get that reward from it. As a result, people with difficulties with overcontrol are more likely to strive for, I suppose, high levels of achievement, because then they actually do experience that reward, as opposed to me, who I might experience that level of reward for just, walking a bit quicker, or, seeing some ducks at the pond. People with low reward sensitivity often are striving a lot harder to achieve that. And that's a biotemperamental thing that we can alter with treatment, try to help people find ways of experiencing reward in those situations, but it's not a quick fix, and it's going to be really hard if that's not born into you, unfortunately. The next biotemperamental capacity is our high effortful control, so our ability to be in control. And this is something which is obviously quite central to the idea of overcontrol, that ability to delay gratification, that ability to put off having the marshmallow. If we think about the marshmallow experiment, the ability to put that off for a while because, we want something else later, or we'd rather save it, as opposed to the low self-control where it's like, oh yeah, I want this, I want it now. And this is, again, a really great thing. This is hoarding, maybe not hoarding, it's not the right word, but saving our resources for a little bit later on, or holding out on having the treat until after dessert, or something like that, which is going to be really good for us from an evolutionary perspective, not eating all the food when it's plentiful so we've got some for later, but also from just generally a functional perspective, wait until after work to have that drink, or wait until, you don't need to eat all the chocolate on Easter, you can spread it out. So this is going to be a really good thing in a lot of cases, but unfortunately in other ways it's going to keep us safe, because we do need to let go of this constant planning for the future sometimes. So the high effortful control and that self-control capacity, whilst being quite good, is obviously one of those biotemperamental factors that really do contribute to maladaptive overcontrol. The very last one of the four main biotemperamental things that are happening with people with overcontrol is our high detailed focus processing. This is opposed to global focus processing. So people with this temperamental trait are more likely to see the really small, minor details in things, as opposed to seeing the big picture. Again, this is great, from an editing, proofreading perspective, amazing. From a perspective that, they're only seeing the spelling mistakes on a bit of paper, slightly annoying. But it is a really good thing to have that ability to be detailed focus processing. An interesting characteristic of detailed focus processing is that it quite often is related to high levels of anxiety. We're not 100% in agreement about what comes first, the chicken or the egg, the high state anxiety or the high detailed focus processing, but generally that detailed focus processing is more likely to happen in times of that anxiety, because we're looking for dangers, we're trying to pinpoint that, as opposed to when we're relaxed and possibly in our social safety system, we're more likely to see the big picture. So that detail focused versus global focused processing is a really important temperamental trait that also comes along with maladaptive overcontrol. So they are those four main temperamental traits that from a RO-DBT perspective are quite important for the development of maladaptive overcontrol. So when it comes to assessment, we are looking for those things. When it comes to understanding the disorder, that's what we're trying to focus on, that's what we're trying to target. So that's a little bit about biotemperament. And obviously in some of the other clips we'll talk about how to actually treat that, but this is a really important way of considering what is actually important to us and where a lot of these difficulties are likely to develop from. Thank you very much, tribe, for watching. I'll talk to you later.